The stars looked different from this far away from Earth. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the endless darkness of space through the main viewport. His crew had been traveling for 3 months, mapping new star systems that no human had ever seen before. The year was 2347, and humanity had finally cracked the secret of faster-than-light travel. It felt like the beginning of a new age. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for most of his adult life, but this mission felt special. Every jump they made took them further into unknown territory. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Daniel Ross, was a younger officer with bright red hair and too much energy for the early morning shift. "Commander, we're picking up something strange," Daniel said, staring at his console. "Multiple ships dropping out of FTL travel. Big ones." Jake moved to the sensor station. The screen showed 15 massive vessels, each one at least 3 times the size of the Horizon. They had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the human ship in a loose formation. Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was it. Humanity's first contact with alien life. "Open all channels," Jake ordered. "Let's say hello." Before his communications officer could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with the same image. A creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and an insect stared back at them. Its skin was dark purple, covered in armored plates. 4 eyes glowed with an orange light. When it spoke, the computer translated its words into English. "Human vessel, you have entered territory claimed by the Velcron Dominion. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Jake exchanged looks with Daniel. This wasn't the friendly first contact that everyone on Earth had hoped for. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Force. We come in peace. We didn't know this space was claimed by anyone." The alien's face didn't change. "Ignorance is not an excuse. The Velcron Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Your species is new and weak. You will submit to our authority, or you will be eliminated." The transmission ended. Jake felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every decision he made now would affect the entire human race. "Get me Earth Command. Priority 1. And start charging the FTL drive. We might need to run." Over the next hour, Jake learned more about the Velcron than he wanted to know. They were an empire that controlled hundreds of star systems. They had conquered 47 different alien species, turning them into slaves and workers. The Velcron believed that power was the only thing that mattered in the universe. They took what they wanted and destroyed anyone who stood in their way. High Admiral Zarthax, the commander of the Velcron fleet, sent another message. This time he showed Jake holographic images of destroyed worlds. Cities burning, ships exploding, entire civilizations wiped out. "This is what happens to those who refuse to bow," Zarthax said. "Your Earth will join our empire, or it will become dust and memory." Jake kept his face calm, but inside, fear was clawing at his chest. The Horizon was an exploration ship, not a warship. They had some basic weapons, but nothing that could fight 15 Velcron battleships. He needed to get this information back to Earth. "We need time to discuss this with our government," Jake said. "Give us 30 days. Zarthax laughed, a harsh sound that made everyone on the bridge flinch. 30 days? Very well. I am generous today. Return to your primitive world and tell your leaders that the Velcron Dominion is coming. Prepare your surrender or prepare to die." The alien ships vanished as quickly as they had appeared, jumping back into FTL travel. Jake didn't waste a single second. "Plot a course for Earth, maximum speed. We need to warn everyone." The journey home took 2 weeks of constant travel. Jake barely slept, spending his time reviewing everything they had recorded about the Velcron. Their ships were advanced, their weapons powerful, their military massive. On paper, humanity didn't stand a chance. When the Horizon finally reached Earth, Jake was immediately summoned to a meeting with the highest levels of government. President Nicole Hayes sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by military officers and advisors. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Tell us everything, Commander," she said. Jake did. He showed them the recordings, explained the Velcron demands, and gave his honest assessment. "Madam President, we're talking about an empire that has been conquering worlds for thousands of years. They have technology we can't match and an army we can't fight. If we try to resist, they'll destroy us." The room fell silent. Some of the generals looked worried. Others looked angry. But President Hayes just smiled, a small expression that confused Jake completely. "Commander Morrison, what you don't know is that humanity has been preparing for this day for a very long time," she said. She pressed a button on the table and the lights dimmed. A holographic image appeared, showing a massive structure hidden inside an asteroid. Then another, and another. Dozens of secret bases, all filled with ships and weapons that Jake had never seen before. Admiral Kevin Price, a gray-haired man with a scarred face, stood up. "Son, what you saw out there was our exploration fleet. Small ships, lightly armed, meant for peaceful missions. What you didn't see is our real military. We've been building it in secret for over 100 years. Jake felt his world shifting. "Why keep it secret?" "Because we learned from history," President Hayes said. "Every time humanity showed its full strength too early, it led to war. We decided to appear weak while we grew strong. The Velcron think we're primitives with a handful of ships. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Another officer, General Chris Walker, pulled up more images. "We have over 3,000 warships ready for combat. We have weapon systems the Velcron have never encountered. And we have something they don't have. 400 years of human military history teaching us how to fight smarter, not just harder." Jake looked around the room and saw determination on every face. These people weren't scared. They were ready. "What do you need from me?" "We need you to go back out there," Admiral Price said. "We're sending Captain Lisa Bennett to negotiate with the Velcron. She's a diplomat, one of the best. But she needs protection, and she needs someone who has already faced them. Will you do it?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir." Over the next few days, Jake watched as Earth transformed. Ships that had been hidden in deep space began moving into defensive positions. Weapon systems came online. Soldiers prepared for battle. The whole planet was getting ready for war. But they were doing it quietly, carefully, making sure the Velcron didn't know what was coming. Captain Lisa Bennett was a short woman with black hair and a calm voice that made everyone around her relax. She met with Jake to discuss the mission. "We're going to meet with the Velcron on their flagship. They think we're coming to surrender. Instead, we're going to buy time and gather intelligence." "That sounds dangerous," Jake said. Lisa smiled. "Everything worth doing is dangerous, Commander. But don't worry. We have plans within plans. The Velcron are about to learn that humanity doesn't surrender. We fight, we adapt, and we win." As the USS Horizon prepared to leave Earth once more, Jake looked back at the blue planet below. Somewhere down there, his family was waiting. His friends. Everyone he had ever known. The Velcron were coming to destroy all of it. But humanity wasn't going to make it easy for them. Not by a long shot. The galaxy thought it knew what humans were capable of. They were about to find out they were very, very wrong. The Velcron flagship was enormous. Jake Morrison guided the USS Horizon through the docking bay, his hands steady on the controls even though his heart was racing. The bay was large enough to hold 50 human ships, and it was filled with alien fighters and transport craft. Everything here was built to remind visitors that the Velcron Dominion was powerful and unstoppable. Captain Lisa Bennett stood beside him, dressed in a formal diplomatic uniform. She looked calm, but Jake knew she was carrying a weapon hidden in her jacket. So was he. They both knew this meeting might not end peacefully. "Remember the plan," Lisa said quietly. "We listen, we observe, and we make them think we're considering surrender. Every minute we buy Earth is a minute our people can prepare." High Admiral Zarthax met them in a massive throne room. The Velcron leader sat on a chair made of some dark metal, surrounded by guards carrying energy weapons. His 4 orange eyes studied the humans like a cat watching mice. "You have come to accept our terms?" Zarthax asked. "We have come to discuss terms," Lisa replied. Her voice was steady, professional. "You're asking humanity to give up its freedom. That's not a small thing. We need to understand exactly what you're offering in return." Zarthax laughed. "Offering? You misunderstand. We are not making an offer. We are giving you a choice, serve or die. That is all." For the next 3 hours, Lisa tried to negotiate while Jake recorded everything he could see. The layout of the ship, the number of guards, the type of weapons they carried. Every detail might be useful later. But the meeting went nowhere. Zarthax refused to compromise on anything. The Velcron wanted complete surrender, and they wanted it now. As they left the flagship, Lisa was quiet. Once they were safely back on the horizon and traveling toward Earth, she finally spoke. "He's not going to give us the full 30 days. Zarthax is planning to attack early. I could see it in his eyes. How long do we have? Jake asked. 2 weeks, maybe less. Back on Earth, President Nicole Hayes called an emergency meeting. This time it wasn't held in a government building. Instead, Jake and Lisa were taken to a secret military base deep underground. The room was filled with people Jake had never seen before, and the technology around them looked like something from a science fiction movie. Dr. Helen Carter was there, a woman in her 40s with blonde hair and glasses. She was the head of Earth's advanced weapons program, and she had secrets that even most generals didn't know about. The Velcron think they know everything about us, Helen said, pulling up holographic displays. They've been watching our public communications, our commercial ships, our exploration fleet. What they haven't seen is this. The display showed a map of the solar system. Hundreds of red dots appeared, scattered throughout the asteroid belt and beyond. Each dot represented a satellite, and each satellite was part of something called the Quantum Disruption Network. We've been building this for 50 years, Helen explained. These satellites can create targeted gravitational fields. When activated, they can tear apart any ship in range at the molecular level. Shields don't matter. Armor doesn't matter. Physics itself becomes a weapon. Jake stared at the display, his mind struggling to understand. Why haven't we used this before? Because it's incredibly dangerous, Admiral Kevin Price said. If we make one mistake, we could accidentally rip apart our own ships or even damage the planets. We've been testing it in secret far from Earth, making sure we can control it perfectly. We can, and soon, the Velcron are going to see it in action. General Chris Walker, a muscular man with dark skin and a no-nonsense attitude, stood up next. The QD network is our ace card, but it's not our only advantage. We've also developed new fighter craft that are faster and more agile than anything the Velcron use. And we've trained our pilots in tactics that no one else in the galaxy has ever seen. He pointed to a young woman standing near the back of the room. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez is one of our best. She's going to demonstrate what our new Raptor-class fighters can do. Amy was in her 20s with brown skin and short black hair. She looked nervous but excited. Sir, we're ready. My squadron has been training for this our entire careers. Over the next week, Jake watched as Earth's hidden military came out of the shadows. Ships that had been disguised as mining vessels revealed their true nature as warships. Space stations that looked like research facilities opened to show massive weapon batteries. Soldiers who had been training in secret for years moved into position. But Earth wasn't doing this alone. 3 alien species had approached humanity asking for help. They were the Etherian Collective, the Draknor Union, and the Luminar Republic. All 3 had suffered under Velcron aggression, and all 3 were willing to fight if humanity led the way. Ambassador Kelthar of the Etherians was a tall, thin alien with blue skin and no visible mouth. He communicated through telepathy, and his thoughts appeared in English in the minds of those around him. We have watched your species for years, his thoughts said. We see courage in you. Courage we lost long ago. If you truly stand against the Dominion, we will stand with you. President Hayes met with the ambassadors personally. We're not asking anyone to die for us, but if you're willing to work together, we can build something better than the Dominion. A galaxy where strength is used to protect, not to conquer. The Etherians offered their advanced sensors. The Draknor, a warrior race that looked like upright wolves, provided intelligence about Velcron military tactics. The Luminar, beings of pure energy, shared their knowledge of faster-than-light communication. Together, the alliance was stronger than any single species could be alone. Lieutenant Daniel Ross was assigned to work with the allied species, helping to coordinate their forces with Earth's military. He spent long hours learning about alien cultures and military traditions. They're all terrified of the Velcron, he told Jake, but they're more terrified of living under their rule forever. They're willing to risk everything for a chance at freedom. Meanwhile, Amy Rodriguez was training alien pilots in human combat tactics. She quickly learned that different species had different strengths. The Draknor were aggressive and fearless. The Etherians were precise and analytical. The Luminar could process information faster than any biological being. By combining their abilities with human creativity and adaptability, they created fighter squadrons unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Dr. Helen Carter worked day and night, making sure the Quantum Disruption Network was ready. She also developed smaller versions of the technology that could be mounted on ships. These QD cannons were less powerful than the satellite network, but they were mobile and could be used offensively. The Velcron rely on their shields, Helen explained during a briefing. Their entire military doctrine is built around the idea that shields make them invincible. They're going to learn that shields mean nothing when we can attack at the quantum level. 12 days after the meeting with Zarthax, Earth's sensors picked up a massive energy signature at the edge of the solar system. The Velcron were coming, and they weren't waiting for the deadline. 500 warships dropped out of FTL travel near Neptune's orbit. They were arranged in a perfect formation, a show of military precision meant to intimidate. High Admiral Zarthax sent a final message to Earth. Your time is up. Surrender now or watch your world burn. President Hayes stood in the command center surrounded by her military leaders. She looked at the display showing the Velcron fleet, then at the hidden human forces positioned throughout the solar system. She thought about all the people on Earth, on Mars, on the moon colonies, all the families who were counting on her to make the right choice. Send our response, she said quietly. Admiral Kevin Price nodded and opened a channel to the Velcron fleet. His message was simple and direct. Hi Admiral Zarthax, this is Admiral Kevin Price of the United Earth Defense Force. You demanded our surrender. We decline. You threatened our world. We consider that an act of war. You believed we were weak and primitive. You were wrong. Come and see what humanity is really capable of. If you survive, you can take that message back to your empire. The channel closed. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Admiral Price gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. All ships power up weapons. Launch all fighters. Activate the quantum disruption network. Let's show them what humans can do. Jake Morrison strapped into his command chair aboard the USS Defiance, a carrier that had been hidden in the asteroid belt. Around him, 3,000 human warships came to life, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Allied ships joined them, adding another 500 vessels to the defense force. Amy Rodriguez sat in the cockpit of her Raptor fighter, her hands on the controls, ready to launch. Behind her, 200 other pilots waited for the signal. The Velcron fleet began moving forward, confident in their superiority. They had no idea that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The space near Neptune erupted into chaos as the first shots were fired. The Velcron fleet had expected an easy fight, maybe a few desperate human ships trying to defend their homeworld before being crushed. What they got instead was a fully coordinated military force that had been waiting for this exact moment. High Admiral Zarthax stood on his flagship bridge, watching his forward screens as human warships appeared from behind Neptune's largest moon. Then more ships came from the asteroid field, then more from positions hidden in the outer solar system. His four eyes widened as the tactical display updated. 3,000 ships. The humans had 3,000 warships. Impossible, he hissed. Our intelligence said they had less than 200. His tactical officer, a younger Velcron named Vex, checked his console twice. The readings are confirmed, Admiral. We're detecting 3,000 human vessels, plus another 500 ships from species we don't recognize. Zarthax felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. But he pushed it down, replacing it with anger. It doesn't matter how many ships they have. Our shields and weapons are superior. Begin the attack. Destroy them all. Jake Morrison watched the Velcron fleet advance from his command chair on the USS Defiance. The carrier was massive, holding 200 fighter craft in its bays. All around him, his crew worked at their stations, their faces calm despite the fear they must be feeling. Launch all fighters, Jake ordered. Execute pattern Delta 7. The bay doors opened and Amy Rodriguez led her squadron out into space. Her Raptor fighter was sleek and fast, built for speed and agility rather than heavy armor. Behind her, 199 other fighters followed in perfect formation. All right, people, you know the drill, Amy said over the squadron channel. Hit fast, hit hard, and don't get cocky. These Velcron ships are big, but big means slow. Use that against them. The fighters accelerated, streaking across space toward the Velcron formation. The alien ships opened fire with plasma weapons, bright green bolts that could vaporize a small ship in one hit. But Amy and her pilots had trained for this. They flew in unpredictable patterns, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. Saturn's rings, people, Amy called out. Let's use the terrain. The fighters dove toward Saturn, using the planet's massive ring system as cover. The ice and rock fragments scattered sensor readings, making it harder for the Velcron to track them. Then when the alien ships got too close, the fighters burst out from the rings and attacked. Amy targeted a Velcron destroyer, her weapons blazing. The experimental plasma torpedoes hit the ship's engine section, and she watched with satisfaction as explosions rippled across its hull. That's one down. Keep it up. Meanwhile, the main fleet was engaging the Velcron warships directly. Admiral Kevin Price commanded from Earth's orbital defense station, coordinating the movements of thousands of ships at once. The human vessels didn't fight like the Velcron expected. Instead of lining up for traditional space battles, they used tactics borrowed from naval warfare on Earth. Small groups of human ships worked together like wolf packs, surrounding individual Velcron vessels and attacking from multiple angles. When the aliens focused their shields in one direction, the humans would hit them from another. It was chaotic and unpredictable, and the Velcron fleet, trained in rigid military formations, struggled to adapt. "They're not fighting with honor," Vex reported to Zarthax. "They're using ambush tactics, feints, and deception." "Then we will crush them with pure firepower," Zarthax snarled. He ordered his heavy battleships forward. These were massive vessels, each one carrying enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Their shields were powerful, designed to absorb any attack while they positioned themselves for the killing blow. That's when Dr. Helen Carter activated the Quantum Disruption Network. From her control station deep beneath Earth's surface, Helen watched as thousands of satellites came online simultaneously. Each one began generating a precise gravitational field, targeted at specific points in the Velcron formation. The technology was based on humanity's understanding of quantum mechanics, using the fundamental forces of the universe as a weapon. The effect was immediate and devastating. Velcron ships that had been advancing confidently suddenly found themselves being torn apart from the inside. The gravitational fields created shearing forces at the molecular level, ripping through hulls, shields, and even the empty space around the ships. It was like watching invisible hands tear paper. Zarthax stared in horror as 3 of his battleships simply came apart, breaking into pieces that drifted away into space. "What is this? What are they doing?" "Unknown weapon, Admiral," Vex replied, his voice shaking. "Our shields have no effect. The attacks are going straight through them." On Earth, General Chris Walker coordinated the planetary defense grid. Massive railguns positioned on the surface and in orbit opened fire, launching metal projectiles at incredible speeds. These weren't energy weapons that could be absorbed by shields. They were simple kinetic rounds, and when they hit with the force of nuclear weapons. Lieutenant Daniel Ross, stationed at one of the ground-based weapons platforms, called out targets to his team. "Velcron cruiser at Mark 7. Fire on my command." The railgun charged, building up electromagnetic force. "Fire!" The round launched, traveling through space at nearly the speed of light. It struck the Velcron cruiser's command section, punching straight through the shields and armor. The ship went dark, its power systems destroyed. The Velcron fleet was in chaos. They had expected to fight primitives with inferior technology. Instead, they were being torn apart by weapons they didn't understand and tactics they couldn't counter. High Admiral Zarthax made a desperate decision. He would punch through the human lines and attack Earth directly. If he could threaten their homeworld, the humans might surrender to save their families. "All ships full speed toward the inner solar system," he ordered. "Ignore the smaller human vessels. We strike at Earth itself." But Admiral Price had anticipated this. He had held back his most powerful ships in reserve, positioned in high orbit around Earth. As the Velcron fleet approached, these vessels opened fire with everything they had. The combined firepower created a wall of destruction that the aliens could not pass through. Jake Morrison brought the USS Defiance into the thick of the fighting. The carrier launched boarding torpedoes, small craft designed to attach to enemy ships and deploy Marines. Hundreds of human soldiers trained in zero-gravity combat burst into Velcron vessels and began fighting hand-to-hand. The Velcron discovered that humans were terrifying in close combat. They fought with a ferocity that came from protecting their home, and they refused to give up even when wounded. Stories would later spread through the galaxy about human Marines who continued fighting with broken bones and serious injuries, driven by sheer determination. Amy Rodriguez had been flying for hours, and her fighter had taken damage. One engine was sputtering, and her shields were down to 20%. But she saw an opportunity. The Velcron flagship, Zarthax's personal vessel, had taken damage from the QD network. Its shields were flickering, and there was a hole in its armor near the engine section. I'm going in, she told her squadron. Cover me. Rodriguez, that's suicide, one of her wingmen replied. Maybe, but if we take out their commander, this whole fleet might fall apart. Worth the risk. She pushed her damaged fighter to maximum speed, dodging plasma fire and debris. Her wingman flew beside her, drawing fire away from her position. She armed every weapon she had left, targeting the weak point in the flagship's armor. For Earth, she whispered, and fired. The torpedoes hit perfectly, exploding inside the engine core. Secondary explosions rippled through the massive ship, and Amy barely managed to pull away before the entire stern section erupted in flames. She watched as the flagship went dark, its power systems failing. On the bridge of his dying ship, Zarthax clutched his command chair as emergency lights flickered. Half his crew was dead, and the other half was scrambling to save what they could. He stared at the display showing the battle, seeing his fleet being systematically destroyed. The Velcron had brought 500 ships to conquer humanity. Now, less than an hour later, fewer than 50 remained operational. The rest were destroyed, disabled, or captured. It was the worst military defeat in the Dominion's history. Send a distress signal to the homeworld, Zarthax ordered weakly. Tell them humanity is not what we thought. They are dangerous. Very dangerous. The signal went out, a warning that would reach Velcron space in days. But for now, the battle was over. The surviving Velcron ships, seeing their commander's flagship crippled, broke formation and fled. They jumped to FTL speed, desperate to escape the humans and their terrifying weapons. Admiral Price stood in the command center, watching the enemy retreat. Around him, his staff was cheering and celebrating. They had done it. They had defended Earth against an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. But Price didn't celebrate. He knew this was just the beginning. The Velcron would return with more ships, angrier and more determined. The real war was just starting. Jake Morrison landed the USS Defiance in its hidden dock, exhausted but alive. His crew had fought brilliantly and they had survived. He thought about all the people who hadn't been so lucky. Hundreds of ships had, but the news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy, faster than anyone expected. Within hours, every major civilization knew what had happened. The Velcron Dominion, an empire that had ruled unopposed for 10,000 years, had been defeated by a species most aliens had never even heard of before. Ambassador Kelthar of the Etherian Collective was the first to visit Earth after the battle. His tall blue form materialized on the holographic communicator in President Nicole Hayes' office. His telepathic thoughts came through clear and amazed. We watched the battle, his mental voice said. We could not believe what we were seeing. 500 Velcron warships, destroyed or driven away by a species that only discovered faster-than-light travel a few years ago. How is this possible? President Hayes sat behind her desk, tired but composed. She had barely slept since the battle ended. We prepared. We learned from our history, and we were willing to do whatever it took to protect our home. The Galactic Council is in chaos, Kelthar continued. Many species are demanding an emergency session. They want to know if humanity is a threat or a potential ally. Some are frightened of your power. Others are hopeful that you might help them stand against the Dominion. Tell the Council we'll attend their session, Nicole said, and tell them that humanity has no interest in conquest. We defend ourselves and our allies, nothing more. But the Galactic Council meeting would have to wait, because 3 days after the battle something happened that changed everything. The Velcron Dominion declared total war on humanity, and any species that supported them. Emperor Krathis himself appeared on every communication channel in the galaxy. He was larger than the other Velcron, his purple scales darker and his 4 eyes glowing with rage. When he spoke, his voice was filled with venom. The Dominion has ruled for 10,000 years. We have conquered countless worlds and crushed every species that dared to challenge us. This human species thinks one victory makes them strong? They are wrong. We will mobilize every ship, every soldier, every weapon we possess. We will burn their Earth to ashes and enslave every human we find. This is our promise. This is our vow. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Everyone knew what this meant. The Velcron weren't going to send another small fleet. They were going to bring everything they had. Admiral Kevin Price stood in the war room looking at intelligence reports that painted a grim picture. Our analysts estimate the Velcron can field at least 5,000 warships if they pull from all their territories. Maybe more if they're willing to leave their conquered worlds undefended. General Chris Walker, standing beside him, crossed his arms. Can we handle 5,000 ships? Not alone, Price admitted. We took heavy losses in the last battle. We need allies, and we need them fast. That's where Captain Lisa Bennett came in. Over the next 2 weeks, she traveled to a dozen different worlds, meeting with leaders of species that had suffered under Velcron rule. She was diplomatic, respectful, and honest about humanity's capabilities and limitations. The Draknor Union was the first to formally ally with Earth. Their leader, War Chief Karn, was a massive wolf-like alien with silver fur and scars from countless battles. He met Lisa in a war hall on his homeworld, surrounded by his most trusted warriors. The Velcron killed my father and enslaved my brother, Karn growled. They have taken from us for generations, and we were too weak to stop them. But now there is hope. Your species has shown that the Dominion can be beaten. We will fight beside you, human. We will die beside you if necessary. The Luminar Republic joined next. These beings of pure energy had been forced to power Velcron machines for centuries, trapped in containment fields and used like batteries. Their spokesperson, a glowing entity that called itself Bright, communicated through light patterns that translated to speech. Freedom. You offer us freedom. That is worth any price. We will share our technology, our knowledge, everything we have. Just promise us that when this war is over, we will never be slaves again. Lisa made that promise, knowing that she was committing humanity to a war that might last years, but it was the right thing to do. If Earth turned away from these species now, they would be condemning millions to continued suffering under Velcron rule. The Etherian Collective was more cautious. Ambassador Kelthar met with Lisa on a neutral space station, his telepathic thoughts carefully measured. We have lived in fear of the Dominion for so long that many of my people have forgotten what courage feels like. If we join you and you lose, the Velcron will exterminate us completely. Can you guarantee victory? Lisa looked him in his large, dark eyes. No, I can't guarantee anything. War is unpredictable, and the Velcron have resources we're still learning about. But I can promise you this. Humanity will fight until we win or until there are no humans left to fight. We don't give up. We don't surrender.
And we protect our allies with everything we have.
Kelthar was silent for a long moment. Then his thoughts came through, filled with determination. Then we will join you. Better to die fighting than to live in fear forever. With the alliance formed, humanity began preparing for the largest military operation in its history. But this time, they weren't just defending Earth. They were going on the offensive. Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of the expeditionary fleet. His job was to take the fight to Velcron territory before the Emperor could fully mobilize his forces. It was a risky strategy, but Admiral Price believed it was their best chance. If we wait for them to come to us, they'll have time to organize and plan, Price explained during a strategy meeting. But if we hit their supply lines and liberate some of their conquered worlds, we force them to react to us instead of the other way around. Lieutenant Daniel Ross, now promoted to commander, was assigned to Jake's fleet as an intelligence officer. His job was to identify targets and gather information about Velcron operations. He worked closely with the allied species, learning about Velcron weak points and vulnerable territories. The Draknor have given us locations of 3 major supply depots, Daniel reported. If we can destroy those, we'll cripple the Velcron's ability to support their fleet. And the Etherians have sensor data showing that the Velcron have enslaved a species called the Cathari. Apparently the Cathari were once highly advanced, but the Dominion conquered them thousands of years ago. Why is that important? Jake asked. Because the Cathari might still have knowledge or technology that could help us, Daniel said. If we can liberate their world, they might join the Alliance. Meanwhile, Amy Rodriguez was training the next generation of fighter pilots. She had survived the Battle of Earth with only minor injuries, but her fighter had been completely destroyed. Now she flew a new Raptor, upgraded with technology shared by the Luminar and Etherian allies. She worked with pilots from different species, teaching them human combat tactics while learning from their unique abilities. The Draknor were naturally aggressive and fearless, but they sometimes took unnecessary risks. The Etherians were precise and analytical, but they hesitated in chaotic situations. The Luminar could react faster than any biological being, but they struggled with long-term strategy. We need to combine all our strengths, Amy told her mixed squadron during a training session. Draknor aggression, Etherian precision, Luminar speed, and human adaptability. Together, We're stronger than any one species could be alone. Dr. Helen Carter continued working on the quantum disruption technology. She had found a way to miniaturize it even further, creating personal weapons that could disrupt shields and armor at close range. She also developed countermeasures against Velcron plasma weapons, improving the survivability of human and allied ships. But Helen knew that the Velcron wouldn't stand still. They would be studying the battle recordings, analyzing human tactics, and developing counters. The next fight would be harder than the first. "We can't rely on surprise anymore," she told Admiral Price during a private meeting. "They know what we're capable of now. We need new weapons, new tactics, something they won't expect." Price nodded. "What do you have in mind?" "I'm working on something called a cascade bomb. It's based on the QD technology, but instead of targeting ships, it targets space itself. If we detonate one in the right location, we could create a temporary barrier that prevents FTL travel. We could trap an entire fleet or cut off their reinforcements. That sounds incredibly dangerous." "It is, but war is dangerous, and we need every advantage we can get." Back on the Velcron homeworld of Kratha Prime, Emperor Krathis was mobilizing his empire's full military might. He stood before his war council, a gathering of the most powerful Velcron military leaders. "These humans have embarrassed us," he said, his voice cold and deadly. "They destroyed a fleet. They made us look weak. Every species in the galaxy is now questioning whether the Dominion is truly invincible. We cannot allow this doubt to spread. We will crush humanity so completely that their name will become a warning to others. Any species that dares to challenge us will remember what happened to Earth." The War Council responded with aggressive affirmations. Plans were drawn up for the invasion. 5,000 warships would be assembled, the largest fleet the Dominion had ever created. They would hit Earth. The journey to Velcron territory took 3 weeks of constant travel through FTL space. Admiral Jake Morrison used that time to drill his fleet endlessly, running simulation after simulation. Everyone knew that the real battle would be nothing like the simulations, but training kept the crews sharp and focused. Commander Daniel Ross spent his time analyzing intelligence reports from allied species. The Cathari homeworld was their first target, a planet that had been enslaved by the Velcron for over 3,000 years. If the intelligence was correct, the Cathari had once been masters of shield technology, far more advanced than anything the Velcron possessed now. Why didn't the Velcron use their technology? Jake asked during a strategy meeting. "They did at first," Daniel explained, "but the Cathari built their shields with a fundamental flaw, a backdoor that only they knew about. When the Velcron tried to force them to share it, the Cathari refused. The Dominion spent centuries trying to crack the secret, but they never could. So they enslaved the entire species out of spite." Amy Rodriguez, now commander of the fighter wings, studied the tactical map of the Cathari system. "The planet has 3 orbital defense stations, all Velcron, plus at least 50 warships in permanent guard positions. They're not going to let us waltz in and liberate the planet." "No, they're not," Jake agreed. "Which is why we're going to use deception." The plan was complex but elegant. The main fleet would approach the Cathari system openly, as if planning a direct assault. This would force the Velcron defenders to concentrate their forces at the expected attack point. Meanwhile, a smaller strike force led by Amy would use the Luminar's advanced cloaking technology to slip past the defenses and reach the surface. Once on the ground, they would make contact with the Cathari resistance movement and help them rise up against their Velcron overlords. The chaos would force the orbital defenders to split their attention, giving the main fleet an opening to attack. The operation began exactly as planned. Jake's fleet dropped out of FTL travel at the edge of the system, their weapons powered up and shields active. The Velcron defenders immediately went on alert, moving their ships into defensive formations. "They're taking the bait," Daniel reported from the sensor station. "All ships are moving to intercept us." "Good. Amy, you're clear to proceed." In a small, fast transport hidden among the fleet, Amy and her strike team accelerated away from the main group. The Luminar cloaking technology wrapped around their ship, bending light and sensor waves so effectively that they were essentially invisible. They slipped past the Velcron patrols like ghosts in the darkness. Landing on the Cathari homeworld was difficult. The planet was heavily monitored, with sensors watching for any unauthorized activity. But the Cathari resistance had prepared a landing zone in a remote mountain region, far from Velcron settlements. When Amy stepped off the transport, she got her first look at the Cathari people. They were humanoid but smaller than humans, with pale gray skin and large, intelligent eyes. Their leader, an elder named Shen, approached her with caution. "You are the humans," Shen said in broken English. "The ones who defeated the Velcron at Earth." "That's right," Amy replied. "And we're here to help you win your freedom. But we need your help too. We need to understand your shield technology." Shen studied her for a long moment. "For 3,000 years we have kept our secrets from the Velcron. They have tortured us, killed us, tried everything to force us to share. Why should we trust you?" "Because we're not asking you to give us your technology so we can use it against you," Amy said. "We're asking you to help us defeat the Velcron so that no one has to suffer like you have. After this war is over, your technology stays yours. We'll help you rebuild your world, and then we'll leave you in peace." Shen looked at the other Cathari elders, communicating in their own language through gestures and soft sounds. Finally, he turned back to Amy. "Very well. We will help you. But first, we must free our people from the labor camps. The Velcron have millions of our kind enslaved in factories and mines. We cannot fight while our families suffer." "Then that's what we'll do," Amy said. "Show us where the camps are." In orbit, Jake was engaging the Velcron defenders. The battle was fierce, with plasma weapons and missiles filling the space between the two fleets. But Jake's ships used the same unpredictable tactics that had worked at Earth, refusing to fight the way the Velcron expected. "3 Velcron cruisers targeting our left flank," Daniel called out. "They're trying to envelope us." "Let them," Jake replied calmly. "Pull back the left flank, make it look like we're retreating. Then when they commit to the attack, hit them from above and below." The maneuver worked perfectly. The Velcron ships, seeing what they thought was weakness, rushed forward to exploit it. But they flew straight into a crossfire from human and allied vessels that had been waiting in position. 2 of the 3 cruisers were destroyed, and the third limped away with massive damage. On the surface, Amy and the Cathari resistance launched coordinated attacks on 12 labor camps simultaneously. The Velcron guards were caught completely off guard. They had grown complacent over centuries of easy control, and they weren't prepared for organized resistance. Human soldiers fought alongside Cathari rebels, using a combination of advanced weapons and guerrilla tactics. Within hours, millions of Cathari prisoners were freed. They armed themselves with captured Velcron weapons and joined the fight, their numbers overwhelming the scattered defenders. Shen led Amy to a hidden underground facility that had somehow survived 3,000 years of Velcron occupation. Inside, preserved in ancient technology, was the Cathari's greatest secret, the blueprint for adaptive shields that could reconfigure themselves to defend against any weapon. "This is what the Velcron have been searching for," Shen explained. "Shields that learn and adapt. They cannot be defeated by brute force because they evolve with every attack. We built them to protect ourselves, but the Velcron wanted them to conquer others." "Will you help us build these for our ships?" Amy asked. "We will do better than that," Shen said. "We will teach you the flaw we built into them. Every Cathari shield has a frequency weakness, a specific resonance that will collapse it instantly. We built this in case our technology was ever stolen. With this knowledge, you can defeat any Velcron ship using our shields." Amy realized what this meant. The Cathari had been planning their revenge for 3,000 years, waiting for someone strong enough to help them execute it. "How many Velcron ships use your shield technology?" "All of them," Shen replied with a thin smile. "The Dominion never cracked our secrets, but they managed to steal prototypes and reverse engineer partial versions. Every major Velcron warship uses modified Cathari shields, and every single one has the same weakness." Amy immediately transmitted this information to Jake in orbit. The effect on the battle was immediate. Human ships began targeting Velcron vessels with weapons tuned to the specific frequency Shen had provided. Shields that should have absorbed the attacks collapsed instantly, leaving the Velcron ships defenseless. The orbital battle turned into a rout. Velcron defenders, seeing their shields fail, began retreating in panic. Some tried to surrender, but others fought to the death, refusing to accept defeat. Within 6 hours, the Cathari system was liberated. But this was just one planet. The real war was still ahead. News of the Cathari liberation spread quickly. 3 more enslaved species rose up in rebellion, inspired by humanity's actions. The Velcron Empire, which had seemed invincible, was suddenly dealing with uprisings across dozens of worlds. Emperor Krathis, watching his empire begin to crumble, made a desperate decision. He would take personal command of his fleet and attack Earth directly. If he could destroy humanity's homeworld, the resistance would collapse. The enslaved species would lose hope and return to submission. He assembled his fleet at Kratha Prime, the Velcran homeworld. 5,000 warships, the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. Every ship was upgraded with new weapons designed to counter human tactics. Every crew was handpicked for loyalty and skill. Admiral Kevin Price, monitoring from Earth, watched the Velcran fleet assemble. They're coming. All of them. President Nicole Hayes stood beside him, her face grave. Are we ready? As ready as we'll ever be. Jake's expeditionary fleet is on its way back, but they won't arrive for another week. We'll have to hold Earth with what we have until reinforcements arrive. Then we hold, Nicole said simply, no matter what it takes. The Velcran fleet jumped to FTL speed, heading straight for Earth. Their journey would take 5 days. During that time, humanity prepared for the battle that would decide everything. Dr. Helen Carter activated every defense system Earth possessed. The quantum disruption network was upgraded and expanded. New weapons platforms were deployed. Every ship that could fly was armed and positioned. The Allied species sent what forces they could spare, adding another 1,000 ships to Earth's defense. General Chris Walker mobilized the ground forces, preparing for the possibility that the Velcran might try a planetary invasion. If they get past the fleet, we'll fight them in the streets, he told his soldiers. Earth is our home. We don't surrender it to anyone. Jake's expeditionary fleet pushed their engines to maximum, racing to return home in time. They couldn't jump directly to Earth because their FTL drives needed time T.